안녕하십니까. What's in a name? A comparison of botanical nomenclature morphology between Korean and English. So what is botanical nomenclature? It is a standardized, Latinized naming system for plants. These names are universal. No matter the language or country, these names are the scientific standard, like the International System of Units. That's why they use Latin. It's a dead language, no longer evolving like other spoken languages, and it's consistent. Essentially, the morphemes are all closed cases. These names are a binomial nomenclature, meaning a two-part naming system. It consists of the genus, the larger group made up of related species, and the specific epithet, the descriptor used to identify a species within a genus. Together, the two make the species name, a name unique to each species of plant. Both the genus and specific epithet can denote specific traits of the plant by using Latin morphemes. This is especially true for the specific epithet, which usually describe the origin, habitat, physical characteristics, uses, or denotes who it is named after. For example, we have a sample plant, common name, Texas bluebonnet. Its scientific name, Lupinus texensis. Lupinus means wolf-like and is a group in which all lupine plants belong, and texensis means from Texas. This botanical name is the same no matter if we're looking at the plant in the United States or in South Korea. However, common names can change from country to country, language to language, and even region to region. Additionally, the formation of common names also differs greatly. Let's take a look at how Korean and English common names compare, morphologically speaking. There are some similarities in common names derived from the botanical names between Korean and English. On the left for sunflower, we see both still are compounds containing the morpheme for sun, hae, where English uses the morpheme flower, and Korean uses a noun form of the verb tekezat, paraki. On the right, we see both the English and Korean names for sugarcane are compounds, with the first part reserved for sugar or candy, satang, followed by cane or sorghum, susu. While not without exceptions, the pattern for common names of plants typically differs in that Korean fluctuates on whether they put the plant name before color, size, origin descriptors or after. They usually use morphemes that denote function or physical traits. They're almost always compounds, and they tend to eliminate function words. Whereas in English, the color, size, origin goes before the plant, they favor geographic origin descriptors. The names are separated into words, and they tend to use prepositional articles and even possessive markers. An example of this difference is Quercus dentata, where the Korean word is tokka namu and the English word is Korean oak. You can see English favors the geographic descriptor, where Korean favors the function descriptor. Because English common name typically denotes origin, due to the Japanese occupation of Korea, many of Korean national plants have been mislabeled or appropriated as Japanese plants. An example of this is Pina densiflora, sonamu, which is Korea's national tree, the Korean red pine. However, it's often denoted as the Japanese red pine. Thankfully, there are many Korean researchers who are still creating resources to correctly denote Korean native plants. There are differences in how numbers are used in Korean common names. If the noun in the name is a native Korean noun, it will be paired with a native Korean counter. This is even true if it's paired with another loanword noun, as seen with the three-leaf clover, say ip clover. On the other hand, if the noun is a Sino-Korean noun with Chinese origin, it will be paired with a Sino-Korean counter to keep the language harmony, as seen with the five-flavored berry, omija. We see the same language harmony differences with colors. If the noun is a native Korean noun, it will use the native Korean color morpheme, as seen with the royal white azalea using hayangta or huida for hinjoljuk, whereas in Yulong magnolia, the noun is of Chinese origin, so since it's Sino-Korean noun, it'll be paired with a Sino-Korean color morpheme for white pick. There are differences and preferences on how to construct common names between English and Korean. English tends to favor the use of particles, whereas Korean will always opt for compounding plant names. So we see in English we have lily of the valley heavy on particles, whereas in Korean we have unbangulkot, meaning silver bell flower all squished together in a single compound. Additionally, word order is different between the two. When there is negation in English, the verb that is being negated is first, followed by object, and followed with a negation marker at the end. However, in Korean with mulmangjo, the negation is at the beginning, followed by the verb that it's affecting with the noun at the end, notably different from the normal sentence order. Verb phrases are another difference in common naming construction. In English, verbs are used syntactically, whereas in Korean they're used more so semantically with a few exceptions. For example, in English we have climbing, nightshade, weeping willow, bleeding heart, with few variations. Now in Korean we have evening primrose, 달 마치꽃. Instead of translating as flower greeting the moon, ing, it uses the verb stem, the flower which greets the moon. Also, for skunk cabbage in Korean, ajun buja, translated as seated fan in English, it would have been translated as sitting fan, ing, following the English naming structure. However, it opts for that past tense noun modifier. Now there are a few exceptions to this rule as seen in wormwood, torojiki, where it does use the noun nominalizer to roughly translate to a plant bearing heat ing. Possessive use is another difference. In English common nouns, there is an explicit use of apostrophe s possessive markers, really the default for this naming system, such as Queen Anne's lace, goat's beard, and lamb's ear. However, with Korean, typically possession is implicit with compound usage, as seen with cat's whiskers, 고양이 소염, and dropsy grass, twekorise, meaning small mouse's tail. There are a few exceptions that use the explicit possessive marker 이. For example, big leaf tick clover, 도둑놈의 칼거리, in Korean, big thief's hook. Another notable difference is the use of plural markers. In English common name, plural markers are very common, as seen with bells of Ireland, coxcomb, hen, and chicks. However, in Korean common names, there are no observed cases of the plural marker tul. However, there are false plural markers that were part of plant names or other morphemes that represent different nouns, such as 반들사조, shiny spike sedge, where the tul is part of 반들, meaning glossy, or 눈산보들, spreading willow, where the tul is part of the name 보들, meaning willow. Or midule dandelion, or tulgukwa wild chrysanthemum, where the tul means field. Another difference is the use of superlatives. In English common names, superlatives are used in a comparative sense with suffixes like and s, like greater celandine, or they can be used as independent modifiers with standalone superlatives like tall or giant, as seen in tall fescue and giant sequoia. Whereas Korean superlatives are almost always used as independent modifiers and never really in comparison. Kungum kokuk tikseed and taehongrang, big root cymbidium. Also of note in the Korean naming system, big is the most representative superlative. Additionally, Koreans use the morpheme wang, meaning king, as a superlative equivalent of giant or extremely large. Wangho Tangmu, giant knotweed. It's typically not used as a literal king, except in the use of Yoshino cherry tree, Hwangbo-namu. This is contrary to English, as it almost exclusively uses king to denote an actual ruler in plant name like King Solomon's seal. However, there are exceptions where it uses king to denote a superlative like giant, as with King Woodfern. Lastly, temporal markers have differences in the naming systems as well. In English, it's very common to see temporal markers like early or late to denote things like bloom, germination, and seasonal growth times. Examples include early forsythia, late blooming Solomon's seal, and Korean early lilac. However, in Korean, this is very rare. However, there are a few exceptions like irin bongori, early blooming bastrot, nutdungori, the late blooming Solomon seal, and nutkori sarisam, rattlesnake fern. Now it's your turn. Please enjoy this bag of candies that feature plants with unique botanical and Korean common names, and use the worksheet provided to decode the botanical nomenclature and common name morphemes to uncover the hidden meaning in these plant names. Thank you for listening. 감사합니다.